In this video, let's learn about the histology of the spongy or cancellous bone. What is a bone? A bone is a rigid form of the connective tissue in which the extracellular matrix is impregnated with the inorganic salts, that is mainly the calcium phosphate and the calcium carbonate. So these two structures provide the hardness of the bone. And based on the histology, the bones are of two types: the spongy or the cancellous bone, and the another type is the compact bone. So what are the two types based on the histology? One is the compact bone, another one is the spongy bone. We will learn about the compact bone in the upcoming video. Now let's learn about the spongy bone or the cancellous. This is the classification of the bone based on the histology, whereas there are two types of classifications which are based on the maturity of the bone, that is the mature bone and the immature bone, and the another classification is based on the manner of the development. That is, if the bone is developed from the cartilage, it is called as the cartilaginous bone, and if the bone is developed from the membrane, it is called as the membranous bone. So these three are the classification which divide the bones. So let's now talk about the spongy bone and this histology diagram. The spongy bone or the cancellous bone is made up of a meshwork of the bony plates or the rods which are called as the trabeculae. These trabeculae are the meshwork of the bony plates or the rods. Each trabeculae is made up of a number of lamellae. So each trabeculae is made up of lamellae. That is number of lamellae. So in this diagram, this is the trabeculae, and each trabeculae, so this hole is the trabeculae, and each trabeculae is made up of a number of lamellae. So all these are number of lamellae grouped together to form a trabecule. These lamellae contains the osteocytes. So in this diagram, these are the nuclei of the osteocytes which are present in the lamellae and the trabeculae. So these are the nuclei of the osteocytes. And these cavities in between the bony trabeculae is called as the marrow cavity. So this is the marrow cavity, and this marrow cavity is filled with the adipocytes. So these all are the adipocytes or the fat cells. So the trabeculae encloses the white spaces that are filled by the bone marrow. So this is the bone marrow which is filled in the bone marrow cavity, and the trabeculae, they cover the outlining surface of the bone marrow cavity. And these trabeculae receive the nutrition from the blood vessels which are present in the bone marrow. For the blood supply of the young long bone, you can click on the I button. The trabeculae are covered externally by vascular endosteum containing osteoblasts, osteoclasts, and the osteoprogenitor cells. And in the nuclei of the osteocytes, you can see the presence of the lacunae. Lacunae are nothing but the space that is present around the nuclei. So you can see the lacunae here. So this is all about the histology. So remember, the cancellous bone or the spongy bone, it is made up of a network of the bony trabeculae, that is made up of bony plates or the rods, in which some nuclei of the osteocytes can be seen. So these are the nuclei of the osteocytes. The spaces of the network are filled in by the bone marrow, in which numerous fat cells or the adipocytes are present. And the spaces between the fat cells are occupied by numerous blood-forming cells. And in this diagram, we can only see the nucleus of these blood-forming cells. So nearer to the adipocytes, we can see the nucleus of the numerous blood-forming cells in the bone marrow. These are the nucleuses of the blood-forming cells. And the trabeculae are covered externally by the vascular endosteum, which contains the osteoblasts, osteoclasts, and the osteoprogenitor cells. Remember, spongy bone is the tissue that makes the interior of the bones. So this spongy bones makes the interior of the bones, whereas the compact bone is the tissue that forms the surface of the bones. So this spongy bone or the cancellous bone is present inside the bone. Let's suppose this is a bone, and the inside part of the bone is made up of the spongy bone or the cancellous bone, whereas the outside of the bone or the exterior of the bone is made up of the compact bone. But in the long bone, the spongy bone is present in the epiphysis. So these are the epiphyses of the bone. The spongy bone is present in the epiphysis of the long bones, whereas in the diaphysis you can see the presence of the compact bone. So to revise the topic, the spongy bone is the network of the irregular shaped sheets and spikes of the bones which are called as the trabeculae. The trabeculae are only few layers thick, and the spaces between the trabeculae, they contain red or yellow marrow which is dependent on the person's age. In the marrow cavity, you can see the presence of the red marrow or the yellow marrow which is dependent upon the age of the person. And to know the difference between the yellow and the red marrow, you can differentiate as the red marrow contains the blood stem cells and the blood cells in all stages of development. The red marrow cells are supported by a network of the reticular connective tissue framework, whereas in yellow bone marrow, you can see the presence of abundant adipocytes instead of the blood forming cells. And remember, there are no blood vessels present within the matrix of the spongy bone, but the blood vessels which are present nearby the marrow, they exchange the nutrients, gases and etc. So guys, this is all about the histology of the spongy bone or the cancellous bone. If you like this video, do subscribe to my channel. If anyone is seeking quick and effortless admission in these following countries, you can contact me on Instagram at knowing_anatomy. Link is in the description. And do look at some of my recent videos and playlists.